Uh, we can barely hear you, Kito.
Yes, I'm talking. I was talking to myself. That's why. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, much better.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna share my screen here, and all right. Okay. Can you see my screen? Oh, it's loading. Okay. All right. Okay. That's good. All right. Cool. Um, is this size okay for everybody? Like, can you see? Does it looks okay? Okay. Cool. Okay, so I just wanted to add to what Neil said and just say a little bit more about myself so you can get a handle on my background. Um, so I run a little company. We do training, consulting, and mentoring architecture, and we do both front end and back end. But the back end is very heavily based on Java. And front end, we work with different web frameworks, and also we work with cloud and things like that. If you've ever heard of the Prime Tech, like Prime NG or Prime View or those libraries, we work with the company that builds those. They're all open source libraries. Um, oh, great. I thought I could find an old slide of myself. Okay, well, that doesn't work. So just what else I'll say about myself. You can, if you want to find more information about me, you can go to ketoman.com. But I've been involved in the Java community for a long time, since the early days of Java, and a lot of Java, like enterprise Java and things like that. And over the years, I've also been very involved with different open source projects. Mostly over the years, I would use a lot of open source and create bug reports. But in the last couple of years, I've gotten more heavily involved. So I want to spend a few minutes sort of talking about the different the ecosystem that I work with mostly, and then I'll spend some time talking about the specific project where there are specific issues that are there, but also this should give you a sense of a whole set of other open source projects which you may want to play with or contribute to as well. So hopefully that'll be useful. Just to take a step back, so as I said before, I'm very involved in the enterprise Java or Java EE space. If you've worked with Java before, you've probably heard of Spring and Spring Boot. And before Spring Boot took off, there were a lot of technologies for enterprise Java that were built by originally from Sun Microsystems and Oracle. Oracle bought Sun so many years ago, and a whole bunch of other companies like Red Hat and IBM and many others as well. So what happened was, as time went on, Oracle became less interested in their enterprise Java technologies, which are used for all sorts of, sort of backend processes and just building, server-based applications. And that all of that whole project got transferred to the Eclipse Foundation. So, and if you're familiar with open source, you've probably heard of Eclipse. If you just go to eclipse.org, find it. And the Eclipse Foundation is pretty much, it's just a huge foundation, sort of like Apache, but it's governed very differently. Apache is much more, it's not, they don't have as many corporate sponsors in some ways, but I guess the difference with Apache is that it doesn't have as much of a rigid structure, let me put it that way. And Eclipse was started originally from contributions from IBM with the Eclipse IDE, but now it's like huge. So if you go to like the products for Eclipse, you'll find they've got, developer tools and IDEs. That's where they started, but they also have cloud native stuff. They have Edge and Internet of Things, automotive and mobility, all these different things. So there's literally like, dozens and dozens. See, there's 9 pages of Eclipse projects. So the Eclipse Foundation is pretty huge. So But I work mostly in the world of enterprise Java, which is Jakarta EE. So if you go to jakartaee.org or jakarta.ee, I'm sorry, it is a set of technologies for building server-side applications, similar to what you get with Spring Boot and the whole Spring ecosystem. But this is another way to do a lot of the same things, and there's a lot of overlap. As a matter of fact, Spring works with Jakarta EE and actually uses a lot of it. I would say for Beatrice and for anyone else who's really just not into Java, stick with me, because I think what you'll see is the project that I'm going to be talking about is actually a documentation-based project. And there's ways you can contribute there. There's also some things you may find interesting about the way that project works. So I wanted to give you some background first and then get into that project in particular. So yeah, I'm just looking at the question to see if there's anything else here. Okay, cool. So Jakarta EE is all about enterprise Java, building server-side applications. They say cloud native because it can run on, any sort of cloud providers and in Docker containers and fun stuff like that. So this is the main website, and of course they have, information about how to get involved. And I will say that if you do join the project, you have to fill out this little agreement, but the agreement's really easy to join. It's just it's a little contributor agreement. So basically you just create an account and then click yes to this this particular agreement, and then you're good. And there's a little video that you can watch about how to contribute as well. So just to get a sense of what actually is Jakarta EE, it's a whole bunch of different specifications, and this is what's different about it, is that a lot of times open source projects, there's just someone wrote some software, right? Or someone built it internally and then open sourced it. And then it becomes popular and gets more committers and everything. What's different about Jakarta EE is that it's actually specifications. So basically there's a specification defining a particular feature. That feature may be object relational persistence, or it may be providing REST endpoints, or transactions, or a dependency injection container, things like that. So those are specifications, and then there can be different implementations, and that's what's different about it. So the specifications are all developed through an open source project, and then different implementations are developed via open source as well. So for example, if I look at the specifications, I see there's 3 different sets. There's the Jakarta EE platform, the Jakarta EE web profile, and the core profile. And the core profile is what's used in microservices. The web profile provides some more information. You can also write server-side web applications and stuff like that. And the enterprise platform has even more features for more sort of heavy-duty enterprise applications. So those are kind of groups, but then there's individual specifications, and there's a lot of them. So these are all the specifications. Okay, wasn't sure if that was a question or not. Okay. So then there's all these specifications, and what's interesting, is if you go to one of these, let's say I was interested in NoSQL. So if you're familiar with databases, there's SQL databases, which have been around for decades, and then NoSQL ones are ones which are document databases or object databases or vector databases. And Jakarta NoSQL provides a standard way to interact with those kind of databases. So if I went here, I could find the project page. It would tell you sort of briefly how it works. And then it provides an actual specification. And what's nice about this is that if you can actually look at the specification, and it tells you oops, it's not found. Does this work? Nope, that doesn't work either. It's the beauty of open source. It doesn't always work. So the specification gives you details about how the whole thing is supposed to work, which is kind of nice. So let me pick this one. So this is RESTful Web Services. And if I wanted to understand how it works, I could look at documentation, but I could also look at the specification. That tells me in detail how the whole thing is supposed to work. which is kind of nice. It depends on how technical you want to be in terms of reading stuff, but it is useful. So Jakarta EE, they create these specifications and then they have implementations. And the implementation is the actual source code that you can run and everything. And the specification is a document that tells each implementation how to work. And the idea here is that by having a standard and multiple implementations, there's like a standard way of doing things as opposed to this open source project does it one way, this open source project does it this way. And then when you, as a developer, work with the technology and you move to different jobs and different products, you have some consistency in terms of how things are supposed to work. So that's basically the idea. So as you can see here, there's dozens of specifications. So like, you know, if you were interested from let's say you were a Java developer, I am going to talk about stuff that'll work if you're not a Java developer, but let's say you were. And let's say you were really interested in, you know, WebSocket. WebSocket is a way to have a persistent connection between the web browser and the server. So you can do push updates and things like that. You could go to here and then you could, you know, find out information about it. And then you could go to, you could find an implementation and then you contribute code that way. So yeah, and also you can find the API documentation as well. So there's just lots of stuff here. Most people spend time working with, you know, things like CDI, which is dependency injection, or web services, which is REST, or there's JPA, which is a Java persistence API, which is for relational databases and things like that. So that's basically sort of the quick overview of the Eclipse Foundation and Jakarta EE, which is the area that I'm involved in, and sort of what's going on there. Before I get more into my specific project, which is not one of these, it's a little bit different. I know that was a very quick overview, and I know you've got a very diverse group of people here. So does anyone have any questions or anything you want me to expand upon about what I've talked about so far? Okay. I'm not seeing any questions. Okay. Okay. All right, so I'll just continue talking then. So the area that I currently am involved in is tangential to this. So as I said, this technology has been around a long time. So last year, and over the years, there was something which was written, which was called the Jakarta EE tutorial, which is basically a good way for a newcomer to learn about Jakarta EE and all the technologies and how to use them. And that had sort of been out of date for a long time. So last year we started working on updating it. And basically what we did was we sort of reorganized the project, rewrote a lot of stuff. And now we have a new project, which has all the same information about, which is all just basically the documentation for the tutorial. So the tutorial, actually, you can get to it here. You go to Learn and Documentation, and then you click on Jakarta EE tutorial. Okay. So that is this particular project here. So this is the tutorial. And you see we've got all these little notes here. This is currently a draft, subject to change, things like that. So I want you to think of this not as just documentation, but think of it as a product, right? And how do you build it? Okay. And this even if you're not in Java, this is hopefully where you'll find some of this interesting. So basically we've got a website here, right? It has content, and you see we've got table of contents here on the right. We've got the ability to switch between light mode and dark mode. Okay. On the left-hand side here, we have the actual content, right? So this is a tutorial. We have the overview. So if you want to learn more about actually what it is, this is a good place to look as well. And I'd say Yeah, you can start with the overview because I actually wrote this part and I tried to make it easy to read. So I would say if you want to get a better understanding about all the stuff I'm talking about, honestly, just read this overview here. So there's that. Then there's this platform basics section, and then there's all those different specifications I talked about before. But each of these are written in sort of a tutorial format, right? And you notice that we've got syntax highlighting for each of these code snippets. You can cut and paste. And there's links, of course, between different sections, right? Okay. And then we've got further information for each one of these, and this takes you to specific specifications and things like that. So there's that. There's the sort of the left-hand navigation. There's the format of the documentation itself. And you notice there's two little drop-downs here. There's one at the top, and there's one down here. Okay. So what we have here is the ability to switch between different versions. So we're on Jakarta EE10. There's also a 9. We don't have the older versions available, but you can switch to 9 if you wanted to, which looks different. And then on the left-hand side here, we have this navigation for the tutorial, but we could add other things here. So one of the things we're talking about doing is adding other documentation for Jakarta EE here. So like, there's a few different starter applications. Well, there's one big one called the Cargo Tracker, which is sort of a good best practices application for you to learn and work with Jakarta EE. Like we might put the documentation for that here. Or other things we can add here. So we have the ability to have multiple modules essentially in here. Also notice there's this little edit this page button, and what this does is this actually opens up GitHub and shows you this document. So it turns out that each one of these pages or each section is actually an ASCII doc file. And ASCII doc is very similar to Markdown. How many people have heard of Markdown before? I would think most of you, but I'm just checking. There's no hands? Okay, there's a couple of people. All right. I knew I had to get. Now, how many people have heard of ASCII doc before? Okay. So those might be ASCII doc people. I'm not sure. Okay, so ASCII doc is a lot better than Markdown, but it's better for like larger documents. If you're writing some quick comments and stuff, Markdown is great. But the problem with a Markdown is that there's sort of a core, and then there's a whole bunch of different extensions. So there's like GitHub flavored Markdown. There's Bitbucket flavored Markdown. There's every different, there's different variations. Whereas ASCII doc is a really like powerful standard. So if you're familiar with ASCII doc, ASCII doc is actually, I'm sorry, there's two things here. So there's ASCII doc. I'll go to that. So ASCII doc, you can go to ASCIIdoc.org. You can play all about it. There's a reference guide and everything. And this is actually an Eclipse project as well. If you look down here, it's part of the Eclipse Foundation. So ASCII doc is a standard, and this is why I like standards. It's actually a specification, and it's very, very comprehensive. So you can write like entire books, tutorials. I used to do a lot of training. I would write all my training in ASCII doc. Sometimes I do presentations in ASCII doc. So I think of it just a way to write text, and then you can render it in different ways. But if you're familiar with Markdown, working with ASCII doc is really simple. So if I went here and then I went to this one, okay, you see GitHub has built-in support for ASCII doc. And if I went to the raw format, it would look like this. And actually, what I probably want to do is edit it. So let's say I wanted to edit the file. You see it looks pretty similar to Markdown, but you can see there's headings and there's source sections and things like that. So all the content for the tutorial is written in ASCII doc. And when I hit the edit button, you saw that I was back over here because we have the ability to do includes. So we're including different sections in here. Okay. The whole tutorial actually completely is built on ASCII doc, and you can, when you edit something in GitHub, you basically end up creating a pull request, which makes it easy for people to provide suggestions. So one of the easiest ways to contribute to this project, even if you're not super interested, is just to read the intro, and if you have any suggestions, provide suggestions. You can create an issue, give us some feedback, or you can edit it if you see a bug. That's the easiest way to do something. So that's basically sort of the overview of the product. And then if you download, you get the PDF version. Okay, and all this is generated from ASCII doc. So this is the PDF version of that entire project. Okay. All right, any questions so far before I move on? Okay. All right.
I think someone has raised their hand. Justice, do you have any question?
No, not really. That was from a while ago.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right, so that's that. Okay, so that is the product. So it's the Jakarta E documentation. I showed you sort of how it works, right? The other piece that I left out, so I talked about how the actual content is built using ASCII doc, which is sort of like Markdown, right? The other piece is like, how do we get this cool UI, right? And the navigation and all that kind of stuff, right? So you see, you've got, we also have breadcrumbs at the top here, things like that. So that is all done with another open source project, and that is called Antora. So Antora is a way for writing, basically it's a site generator for tech writers who love writing in ASCII doc, which is a good way to put it, okay? So Antora gives us sort of features on top of ASCII doc for building an entire website and providing the navigation and all those little features and things like that. So again, Antora is also open source. And one of the things about it is it lets you build code from different repositories, or build a documentation site from different repositories. So if you have, like we could have the tutorial content, we could have the content for another project, and several of them, and then have them all be visible in the same website. And you'll see this in a lot of other products. So and Tor is actually used by lots of different open source projects, and even some Spring projects, and there's just a lot of them. But it makes it really easy to build a site like the one we have. And the way it works is you basically write your content using ASCII doc, which is what we've done. But then you sort of organize things in a very specific way. And then you also have what's called an Antora UI, which is all of the web assets, all the JavaScript and HTML. And that is provided. There's a default one you have, and then you can customize it to add more features. So if you want to learn more about ASCII doc, Antora, you can go to antora.org. There's a lot of stuff there, which is great. And if you are working on a project where you need to write real documentation, not just a quick README file, ASCII doc and Antora are really great things to use. That is the basic deal. So if I go to GitHub, and I can go to Jakarta EE is the overarching project. Okay. Let me get rid of that. Okay. And there are, of course, dozens and dozens of projects here, right? And all the different specifications are here, etc. But what we're interested in is the tutorial. So, and of course, you can find these in Jubilant as well. But I'm going to go here. Okay, so this is the main documentation site. And basically, there's 3 repos that are involved in this. There's the documentation site, which basically pulls content from different repositories. There's the tutorial content, which is actually the ASCII doc files. And then there is the UI, which is all the JavaScript and HTML assets. What we provide here are the instructions for building it, which are all here. You can build and run. And actually what's interesting is we use, for building this, we use Maven. And Maven is a build tool and dependency management tool, sort of like NPM, sort of. You can think of it sort of that way. So, okay. I see there's a question here from Paula. I don't know if there's anything I can help with right now. I know I'm probably jumping around a lot. But perhaps, Precious, should we clarify something, or should we just move on? All right, cool. Okay. Okay, yeah, so all the instructions for setting this up are here. And then there's a tutorial, which is a different repository, which is here. And then there's also the UI. And I should also mention there's one other repository, which are Jakarta EE examples. And so inside this repository, we've got not only the examples for the tutorial, but also examples for just general purpose things. So if you're wondering how to do something, you could look at this as well. So our examples are in the tutorial folder, and these are the examples that are inside of the tutorial. But there's other examples in this focus folder that have specific things like, okay, how do I do this? How do I save an object to a database? How do I respond to a REST request? How do I, handle security, things like that. So there's lots of examples there as well. But for the purposes of our discussion, we'll stick to the documentation. And the other repo I mentioned is the UI repo, which is here. And you notice that this uses Node and Git. Everything uses Git, of course. And this is just a modification of the default UI. So that's the deal there. So what I wanted to do, I'll spend a few minutes sort of walking through sort of how all this stuff works, just so you guys can get an idea. And then maybe we can open it up for some questions and talk about specific issues if anyone's interested. So I'm gonna go over to my IDE here, okay? And so you see I've got these three projects. I've got the documentation, the UI, and the tutorial, right? And I've got a package.json, which provides dependencies that are being used. And Tora is actually written in JavaScript, so all my JavaScript peeps. And Tora should seem pretty familiar to you. So basically, all that happens in this repo is there's two files. There is a playbook, and the playbook tells Antora what to do. So it's saying, let me build a site called Jakarta E documentation. Here's the content. It is in this tutorial project in GitHub. Okay, this is where I want to grab content from. These are the different branches I want to work with. So this allows us to have different versions of the content, which allows us to switch back and forth. There's some other information here about where the UI is. So it tells us where the UI is as well. And then extensions that we want to use. So we wanted to provide Lunar, which lets us do search, and the PDF extension, which lets us generate a PDF. So there's that. And then there's also an assembler, which has some other directives that we need to provide as well. And then basically all we do is we just run this particular, we run Antora using this playbook. And this playbook will then go out to each of these repos and then grab all the content and build it for us. And the way that you run it is you actually can, if I go to this one, okay. 1 second. Okay. So the way that you do it is you do, look at my actual command here. So we do Maven and we do package and we do -f and pom.xml. So this is all documented on the README. So I'll just do it this way so I can actually remember it. So Maven is basically just going to call npx and run Antora for us. And it's going to generate all the content. So it's going to go grab the content from the Jakarta tutorial project, which is what it's doing now. And then it's going to grab the UI from the documentation UI project, and then it's going to build it all for us. And so while it's doing that, it takes a minute, unfortunately. What also I want to show you is the actual content. So this is the tutorial project. This is where the content is. And we've got a lot of documentation about, like, you know, there's of course a README. There's also a style guide. So anyone that contributes actual content should read the style guide to decide, so we know how to write the content, things like that. There's also information about contributing. But inside the source, this is what you'll find the actual content. So the way it works is we've got the Antora file, which tells you sort of where everything is. So it's saying this is an ASCII doc project, and this is where the root navigation is. And this root folder is basically the sort of top level for the navigation for Antora. And we have navigation here, which shows us all the stuff that's on the left-hand side that tells you where to go. That's defined here. And we have references to each of these files. And then basically, we have partials, which are little sections that can be included in different files. And then we have the actual content. So if you wanted to learn about, you know, CDI, there it is. There's content here. There's case studies, everything. And everything is just an ASCII doc file. Okay. And so what's interesting is that, you know, you can, of course, edit content, right? But also there's the side of actually building it and things like that as well. So let's take a look at the terminal, at the output here. And you'll see that we actually finished running. Okay. So this built everything for us. And then if we go to localhost, and we should be able to find it. Actually, let me find out where I put it here. And actually completely forgot what port it's on. Hold on a second here. I can just go manually to the site. So it's actually, what it generated is a static HTML site. So if I go to documentation and I go to where it generated it, okay, there we go. All right, so there's the actual site. So this is what I just built locally, okay? So I can basically, the way things are set up, I could go and edit a file and then build it and see it show up here. And then of course I could create a PR and then submit the PR as well. So that's basically how it works. And in order for this to actually test out content, you have to basically check out the documentation repo and the documentation UI, and the tutorial repo. And then you can work from there. So that's basically the overview of sort of what things look like with this. For me, even though I'm not really, I mean, even if I wasn't that into Java, for me on this project, it's just interesting building, and basically building an app is what building the site is like. You know, we took it from an old site and then added Antora and things like that to it. So we added a lot of stuff to it. Um, so so that's the story there. I think what I can do is talk about some specific, like really easy things people can do to contribute. And I'll show them on, okay, yeah, so he's got the Tubular links here. Let's see if these actually work for me. Oh, hey, cool. All right. Yes, okay, cool. All right. So this is the first one. So of course there are the ones that are in Tubular, and then there are of course other issues which are older. But I did actually Neil told me to make sure these were available now. So so there's some very simple things that you can do. So for example, this is a really good one. And what's nice about this is you also learn about like just technical documentation in general, right? So this issue here says the SVG version of the newer diagrams that were recently added. See these, they look fine in the browser, but don't render properly in PDF format. Okay, so basically the deal is with this project, someone a long time ago, many years ago, did all the images for this project, for the tutorial, and then I think we lost the source, and then some nice contributor actually went through and recreated all of the images using SVG. And that was a few years ago as well. So we wanted to sort of upgrade the look and feel of it. So what we did was we looked at different tools, right? We looked at different tools, and we decided to pick something called draw.io because we wanted something that was free. So draw.io is I'll just use a blank diagram. Actually, let me do this. If I go to projects, excuse me 1 second here. All right, so if I look at, I believe security has some new images. Okay, that actually worked. Okay, so this is actually one of the images we're using in the tutorial. Okay, very exciting, right? So, so the tutorial has Jakarta E has security, right? So this is showing how an example is working. So there's an identity store, and there's an authentication mechanism, and there's cookie headers, and there's a login form dialog in this example. So it's showing a picture of that, right? So this is what it looks like here. And in the tutorial, which I seem to have missed here. All right. So in the tutorial, if I go, I can find security section. Okay. And there's that picture, right? Because what we did is we exported it to SVG and everything. But if I look at the actual PDF version, okay, I can go down this way, go to my table of contents. Okay, it looks a little messed up, right? So this is what this issue is. It's like, hey, figure out what's going on here and then fix the images so that they render well in PDF and as well as HTML. Okay. So there's a little bit of analysis you have to do to figure out why the PDF rendering isn't handling this image, right? And then of course you need to be able to rebuild the site, regenerate it so that any changes you make are done properly. Okay. So that's one sort of nice low-hanging fruit for an issue. That's one example. Another one, which is pretty straightforward, is there's 2 links that point to a section that has been removed. And yeah, so basically those links need to be removed because they no longer work, right? So that's basically just the process of going through to a couple different ASCII doc files, removing the links, and then of course building it, testing it, and then submitting a PR. So should be a pretty good starting point. There's also let's see, remove. Okay, so this is a good one too. The Jakarta XML binding link under advanced topics doesn't work, right? So basically, if I go back here and I go to advanced topics and I click here, look, it doesn't do anything, right? So it's like, what does that do, right? This is basically saying there's an example in another section, right? So basically what we want to do is provide a simple landing page that describes what it is, has a link to specification and a link to the example. So for this one, you have to figure out what it is, to learn about what it is, and be able to create a simple little page and provide a link to the example. So those are some of the issues we have here. I'm not going to go through them all, but that should give you an idea. And I think there might be a couple other ones, but these are the ones that are showing up here. I can double check.
Yeah.
And you had another link. Let me go to that one. Okay, so the due diligence one is not really. Oh yeah, this is a good one. So if anyone there likes continuous integration or builds, things like that, I actually like that stuff a lot. So what we do with this project is we do continuous integration in the sense that if you put something in like the documentation project, it'll build automatically. But if you add something to the tutorial project, we don't automatically build currently. But the UI, what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to try to trigger the Jakarta documentation pipeline. So basically, if you're in the UI project, and let me just run over here. Actually, here, right? It's this little action section here, right? So GitHub has actions, right, which let you build your code. And we build the code here, but when you run it, it's supposed to then trigger the documentation build as well, and that's not working properly. So it's a bug in the build process. So anyone that likes doing GitHub builds or anything like that, that's a good thing to take a look at as well. So, okay, good. There's a thumbs up. That's good. All right. So, I mean, I think that's pretty much all I have to say. I can go into a lot of detail about anything that anyone wants to talk about or answer any questions. I know it's a lot if you're not familiar with this particular space, but hopefully it gave you a sense of sort of, a whole bunch of other open source projects you may not know about that you can contribute to, even if you're not interested in this one. If you do Java stuff and you want to look at, the REST API or NoSQL or something like that, there's a lot of stuff there. But if you also just want to go through the process of contributing, some very simple changes to documentation, that would be great. If you want to review, read some of the stuff and tell me if it makes any sense to you, if it's not something you're familiar with, especially the intro, that would be great as well. So if anyone wants to help, we're happy to get some assistance and help you sort of go through the whole process.
So thanks, Kito. This is wonderful. I mean, seeing a maintainer walking through and explaining open issues, I'm pretty sure everybody got value out of this. I'm pretty sure lots of people going to, especially Java folks, going to pick up some of these issues. What's the best way to reach out to you or get feedback on their work?
I'd say there's two things. First, there is a I know everybody likes Discord, but we're on Slack, so I think there is a Slack group, but I need to find the URL, which I don't have. So probably the best way is just send me an email if you want to take it old school. Here's my email address. Also LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn, not always on there, but I'll get messages on LinkedIn as well. So if we go to, and if you forget any of this stuff, you can just go here and go to LinkedIn or Mastodon, any of those ways. But I'll put my LinkedIn because I'm more likely to chat with people on LinkedIn. Probably the best ways. And then of course, if you comment on an issue, I will see that as well. So like, for example, what often will happen is, so if I go, not here, but if I go, so what will happen is someone, look at one of these closed ones and look at, so for example, for this issue, well, this is someone I know who's been helping out, so that's not an example. But like if someone sees an issue, sometimes they'll just, say, hey, can I pick this up? And then I can respond in GitHub as well. So that's another way. So if you look in there and you're like, hey, I wanna do something, you can just comment on the issue. I'm gonna ask for my GitHub ID, which I think it's just Kito. Yeah, it's Kito 99. So
I got it for you.
Okay, cool. Thank you. There I am. But also, there's also other examples here on the front end stuff too, if you want an old boring example from a presentation. So, yeah, so that's probably the best way. So those are different ways to reach out. Okay.
There was one other question, maybe unrelated. What's your opinion about Java's future?
Oh, the opinion of Java's future? I think Java's future is actually really bright. Because I've been involved in it. It actually came out when I was at university. So I've been working with it for a long time. And I also do TypeScript and JavaScript, and I dabble in Python and stuff like that. But I think it's actually really bright because what's cool about it is the language is actually really good, and they're very good they're very slow with new features, which is annoying to some people, and it's annoying to me sometimes. But whenever they implement it, they do it in a very, very intelligent and well thought out way. So I think the language is doing great. And between Spring and Jakarta EE, it's really great for server-side applications and everything. I don't really do backend JavaScript. I really just preferred using Java for backend stuff because I think it's a really good language. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. And also it's got really good support from all the cloud vendors as well. So I know it's not as hip as Python though. So and I think there's actually been a lot of, for people that are really into more of the AI stuff. Obviously Python is more popular, but people still are making a lot of Java integrations as well. So there's even like LangChain for J is out for people that like Java, but when you use RAG stuff for AI. So that's my answer. Okay, does anyone else have any questions or anything else they want me to explain a little more clearly? Yes, I am. I'm still on there. I keep on wanting to leave, but I haven't yet. So it's Kito99 at Twitter as well. Cool. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Nice to meet everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Kito. Bye.
Yes, please. I have a question. Okay, I'm Gail from Africa, Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm new in contributing. This is the first time I'm trying to contribute in open source. And it's kind of hard because I've never done this before. And it's good, but it's kind of hard for me. So I was asking, maybe I can get a tutorial where I can see someone contributing from step to step until to the end, so that, because I can sit all the day with my laptop trying to contribute. At the end of the day, I push, I get pulled, and nothing's merged. Like, I don't understand how to go about it. And though I can code, I can I'm really willing to contribute, but
Right.
it's kind of hard to go about it. But if I see someone doing it, let me say you pick a one, maybe sample from maybe let me say JavaScript. You do it like someone do it from start to the end, and I see how it's being done. Then I'm good with that. That's the problem I've been having. Yeah, throughout the week from when I started.
Right. Yeah, and actually, I just remembered Neil suggested I do that, and I totally forgot. That's what he suggested I do. My apologies. Uh, I think that would be very useful. I don't know, Precious, if you have any suggestions. I know there is a little video that will show stuff for Jakarta EE, but I don't think it's that detailed. It's probably just showing like, you know, all the different things you can do. But
Yeah, yeah, I think that would help a lot, because I remember, Precious, you say that this week too, some people will get eliminated maybe, and I don't want to be there because I'm not doing that, because I don't know how to do it. It's just I don't know the right way to do it. Okay, thank you.
cool.